It didn't matter where foreigners came into Britain, through the airports, Eurostar, the ports. Wherever it was, the checks supposed to make sure no one dangerous or illegal got in too often weren't working. The border controls were in some places out of control. So not known just how many dangerous people came in on Eurostar, because over the last 4 years, 500,000 people travelling here on it weren't checked against a list to see if they were criminals or terrorists. And the biometric chip in passports that give extra information, well, the chip reader was switched off 14,000 times last year. Fingerprint checks, they were suspended 482 times, the majority at Heathrow. And students from supposedly low-risk countries were allowed into the UK at Heathrow without the correct visas, airports just doing their own thing.
The Vine report reveals that security checks carried out at the border have been suspended regularly and applied inconsistently since at least 2007.
She blamed the border force.
The Vine report reveals a border force that suspended important checks without permission, spent millions on new technologies but chose not to use them, was led by managers who did not communicate with their staff, and that sent reports to ministers that were inaccurate, unbalanced and excluded key information.
But Labour said the border checks were relaxed much more under this government, and ministers must also take the blame.
It's time for her to stop hiding, to take responsibility for things that have happened on her watch, for the unclear instructions from her office, for the policy decisions to downgrade our border controls, for the failure to monitor and check what was going on, and for her failure to take responsibility now.
The former head of the border force, Brodie Clark, quit in November, denying he'd been a rogue official. The man who wrote today's report said the problems were from top to bottom.
There needs to be absolute clarity about what the minimum check is. That has to be agreed by government. There also has to be clarity about who can decide to suspend a check. And there also needs to be better communication between ministers, senior officials in the agency and the staff on the ground.
The border agency will now be split in two. There's much for it to try and get right.